for today's event, we'd like to give a big warm welcome to Sonali, Keith, and Ian. And essentially for today's discussion, it's really about understanding what to expect for this new PMP exam. I'm sure that a lot of us are kind of, a lot of us have uncertainty around how to prepare for the new PMP exam. So through today's discussion, hopefully a lot of our questions will get answered so that we'd be better prepared in terms of what to expect. So I'm gonna pass it over to Edward right now. Let me unshare my screen. Edward, it's all yours now.
Okay, thank you, Nathan. That was very well done. Really appreciate the introduction and the announcements. So for all of you who've been with us, for the last couple of months doing virtual events, I've been bouncing this idea around having successful PMP candidates with us. And tonight, congratulations to all three of you who have successfully completed the exam are now fully certified PMPs. We know that PMI had created a new exam content outline in January, and the new exam went into production on January 1st of 2021. So I've been waiting patiently to see if any of our members or anybody who I knew would be writing the exam, and come the spring, we had found these three individuals who were willing to write it in the new format and also share their experience with us. So it's going to be quite informal tonight. We're going to have a conversation with all three of them. I have some prepared questions for them. And you'll also have an opportunity to ask your questions at later on this evening as well. So without further delay, I'm going to start off with the first question. And the first question is, why did you decide to write the PMP exam? Okay. And I'm going to pose that question to ladies first, Sonali.
Thank you so much, Edward, for giving me the opportunity of being here. I'm really honored. So I'm an immigrant to Canada. I moved here in 2019. Before that, I was working as a project manager in a utility company in India. After moving here, I realized the importance of the PMP certification, like especially being an immigrant and looking for jobs in Canada. This certification is an industry standard. It not only certifies my knowledge and qualification, but also my past experience. So, gaining the certification has really helped me land a great job that I was looking for. I'm now happily employed with Power Factors as a project manager. So it's given me all that I wanted.
Double congratulations for you. It is an international standard, isn't it, or certification?
Yes.
Yeah. How about over to you, Keith?
Yeah.
Why did you decide to write the exam?
First off, thanks so much, Edward, for bringing me on, and it seems like we have a really great audience here as well. So thanks everybody for jumping in. In terms of the exam itself, I guess I had a lot of spare time during the COVID lockdown, so thought it'd be a good time to use and learn something and professionally develop myself. But here we are now. We're still kind of semi-lockdown, so. On a more serious note, PMP for me has always been pretty aspirational. I really like working on projects and collaborating with different stakeholders. Being able to see initiatives from end to end, and then finally just looking at completed projects. You can really see the things that you helped launch, and your stakeholders continue to use it and get the benefit out of it. So PMP has kind of helped me structure my projects a little bit better. Understand all the different tools and techniques that other project managers use, and it's been helpful for me to leverage in my day-to-day. So currently I lead customer success programs at SAP for one of our lines of businesses, and I'm definitely using all the things that I'm learning, as well as learning some more industry specific knowledge that I wouldn't have gotten necessarily if I didn't pursue my PMP.
Well said. And Ian, why did you write the PMP exam?
Thanks so much, Edward. And again, thanks everyone for tuning in here. Looks like we've got a good crowd. I think everyone's kind of provided pretty good comments. I do want to add on for myself, my kind of career entry wasn't directly into project management. My career entry was kind of more specific to a discipline for my career, which is kind of park design, landscape construction and management. So my focus originally was more so detailed design, technical specifications, items that weren't specifically related to project management. And I kind of discovered project management as an industry and field as I explored more about my career and met more people in my industry. And so I just wanted to learn more really about the skill sets involved, how to do my job better. I felt that acquiring the certification was really great, as Keith and Sonali had mentioned, for career advancement. It was a tangible validation of the skill set that we're building on. And this reputation is really helpful for showing for my organization and for myself the skill set that I carry. And so I just want to add on that working towards the PMP, it just kind of gave me a kind of structured approach on the industry standards of how project management is formed. And so for me, learning and entering the project management field, it was really the best way for me to do it in a way that was accepted by the project management community, and make sure that I was learning and developing myself in a way consistent with what the industry would do.
Thank you, Ian. We are experiencing some technical difficulties with Ian's mic. So you might want to turn up the volume on your computer or your speakers. And Ian, if I can get you to speak as loud as you can, please. Really, really appreciate it. But let's go on to the next question. So the next question is, how long have you been considering the PMP? And the reason why I asked this question is really it has to do with me, because it took me around 15 years, 2 prep courses. I never wrote the exam after the prep courses, but for me, it took a long time because we have family obligations, we have work obligations, and all those things just come before our own professional development. And I was wondering, was it true with you? Did it take a while for you to get the courage or the right environment to finally decide to write the exam? And let's go with Keith this time, please.
Absolutely. Yeah, it definitely took a long time. I heard about PMP actually way back when I was still in school. I didn't have any formal experience in project management at that time, but I just got exposed to PMP because it's so easy. It's pretty hard to avoid, actually. You definitely hear about the organization and the exam. I had coursework that was relevant to project management, and they obviously mentioned PMP as kind of one of the universally recognized certifications that you can get as project management. At networking events where you meet people, there are a lot of PMP certified folks, and they talk about their experiences with project management. And then I think the most valuable thing that I've found just after I got the PMP is just really using the same language and terminology that you get. Working with different functional groups, everybody speaking the same language really helps with communication. So it's been a long time since I was considering it. I did wait a while since I didn't have, let's say, the experience, the working experience that you need to apply to actually write the exam. And so I waited for that. I built up some experience through different projects, some volunteer projects, some projects at work, and then the exam finally changed. I was actually considering it last year. It changed a little bit, so I waited a little bit longer, and then I ended up using the old book still, the 6th edition, and I managed well. Read all the content that they suggested, and I got pretty lucky during the exam, and I finally passed.
Congratulations. Hey Keith, do you work in the tech industry? I believe, is that true?
Yes.
Okay. Is it SAP or where?
Yeah, I work at SAP. So it's obviously a software development company, or a portion of it is software development company. And so all of the devs all use kind of agile methods. for me, since I work on the customer success side, on the program side, we have a mix of tools and programs. So we use a kind of a mix of a hybrid approach of project management.
I see. How about yourself, Ian?
Yes, definitely. I actually started considering the exam when I was first made aware of it. I first noticed it, not formally as yourself, Keith, but I first noticed it through email signatures from coworkers and some consultants I had been emailing earlier in my starting my position with the city of Richmond. I just searched it up. What's this an end of the email? What can I find out about this? Why are they hanging it on? And that's where I learned about it. It wasn't through my schooling, and that's where I kind of figured, this is totally applicable to myself. This is something I want to be certainly aware of. Definitely at the start of my career, I also didn't have any project management experience. And so that's why, as I mentioned, it was a great tool and resource for me to structure my learning and entry into this industry. And so I think I was always interested through my career development and entry about working towards a PMP, and it was a matter of gaining that work experience and structuring my learning and career and the kind of projects my boss at the time would assign to me to make sure we're working on the skill sets and the types of things that would help.
Thanks, Ian. And what do you do at the City of Richmond, Ian?
Yes, so right now I'm a park planner with the Parks Planning, Design, and Construction section. So a lot of what we do is contract administration. We hire contractors, consultants. Essentially, we work on the capital program for the city's parks. That means all the new park developments, all the new assets and infrastructures, as well the existing ones that we need to be improving or updating and replacing, just to ensure that our service levels are accommodated for the community that we've set out in our community plan.
Fantastic. Your volume is improving, I think, but still getting mixed signals. And
thank you. My apologies for that. I'm scooting closer to the computer, so if you see my face getting larger, don't be alarmed.
Nice, close and uptight, eh? Okay. And Sonali, how long have you been thinking about the PMP exam?
So I had like 15 years of project management experience before I moved to Canada. I did some trainings within my organization, but my organization never cared about me having being professionally certified. So I became complacent and never thought about like taking that certification. But after I moved to Canada, I moved here to study. So while I was doing my master's, I met a lot of people in UBC. Everybody suggested me, if you have that kind of experience, it's really worth it to, to go for formal certification. So I started working towards my PMP certification back in 2020 when it was still the old format. But I got mixed up with my master's studies and everything, and PMP certification took a backseat. Then the course format changed, and it took me a long time to get back on track, and I finally gave my exam here. So yeah, it did took me a long time. I lost confidence. I completely lost confidence, even though I was like doing all this courses and learning and doing tests. But it did take me a long time to build up the confidence to actually appear for the exam. In the end, it all went great. I got a great score, and then I got a great job, and yeah.
I agree. There's a factor here that it comes down to your confidence and your courage, but it's never too late. Whether you're starting in your career or you're maturing in your career, the PMP is available and for all different career stages. Okay, let's move on to the next question. The next question is, this is where we're talking about the secret sauce, because I know there are a lot of people out there who are considering writing the exam, or maybe even in the middle of studying for the exam, and they really want to know your experience before you wrote the exam. So we're talking about your preparation and your methodology, the resources that you used, and whether you're a coffee drinker or a late night or early morning person, what was your secret sauce in terms of, we're just talking about preparation right now. And I'd like to hear from you, breaking it down 3 months before the exam, 2 weeks, give or take, before the exam, and then what did you do 2 days before the exam? Okay, so it's a pretty loaded question, but if you can think about the answer in those guidelines, that'll give us some insight into what is your secret sauce. Let's start with Ian this time.
Thanks, Edward. As mentioned, it's a highly loaded question, but I think as what you mentioned, a lot of it just comes down to confidence, being sure of yourself, understanding you're kind of reading the questions and understanding what it's asking. Following the timeline to kind of structure my response, I guess, I think at the 3-month stage, a lot of it's fairly high level still. My studying approach was relatively casual, kind of 2 to 3 hours per week where I can fit it in. Of course, I'm still working at this point, my usual commitments and everything. And so my studying was a lot of gathering study materials and resources, understanding what's out there. For example, through the PMI's website, they offer a lot of resources, especially if you're a PMI member. So hot tip over there, if you're going to be applying to take the exam, definitely apply to become a member as well. It'll help take your exam fees down and also unlock some neat features for you, such as access to some resources like the PMBOK. Right now it's the 7th edition, but at the time for me it was the 6th, as well as the Agile practice guide, which I felt in hindsight was an excellent resource, especially for myself in the construction industry. In the city context, a lot of our project management approach is fairly traditional. So you'll see the waterfall method. For those of you who have started your studying already, that means we're kind of very structured in our approach. You go through your project processes a very similar way every time. And so the Agile practice guide was just so helpful for me because a lot of these concepts were entirely new. And that was just one of the most important things I could have done, especially for my background. So I think at the beginning, a lot of it was just reviewing a lot of these guides, these resources, searching online as well, seeing what you can find to understand, firstly, what you already know, because for a lot of us, we're practicing PMs, we're in industries that use project management skills. You want to know what you know. You don't need to waste your time studying skills and knowledge that you already have. But secondly, you want to know what you don't know, because that's where you want to prioritize your time. And that'll become useful as we go down to the 2 week kind of timeline. But as well, I kind of encourage everyone to browse the forums and videos online to see what people would share about their experiences or what they would say about, what they feel was important for their exam prep as well if they've completed it. That was useful for me because that gave me a kind of, it improved my mindset as how I was feeling entering the exam, and it improved my exam question analyzing approach because I could see how I approached questions. I could kind of see how they might be structured, or I would at least understand, what might I be looking for to select the best answer. And that's kind of the case for how I started my studying, was just to prioritize. I think towards the 1 month away to 2 week kind of timeline, that's when I kind of had a great sense of, this is the content that I have studied up on, the information that I'm aware of. And so at this point, I'm really focusing on exam simulations. There's tons of exam questions out there. I think I've done thousands looking back, and these are from a whole bunch of different sources. So from the 2 week range, I would have averaged probably 60 to 100 practice questions per day. That if you take a minute per question, that's 1 to 2 hours just practice questions every day. This I found was really helpful because it built endurance and just the skill of reading and answering questions. You're never going to know what's going to come up on the exam. And so just looking at many different exam simulations kind of built the skill of reading different kinds of questions. Maybe out of nowhere, there would be a term that I wasn't exposed to before. And that's when I would Google it up and see what I did wrong. And just true trial of fire is really how I kind of resolved my learning experience and made sure I was more confident and really prepared for taking the exam. So by the 2-week range, I kind of wanted to make sure none of the new material was new for me. I would just drill into these exam simulations. There's lots out there. You can definitely Google them up. But I just kept searching for different exam simulations and trying as many different ones as possible. A lot of them are free, by the way, as well. I didn't use any paid exam simulation services. And by the time I got to the 2-day range or so, my focus was really on comfort. So understanding what the exam process was like. I had my exam proctored through the Pearson VUE platform. And so I really went through their website and looked into what the PMI requirements was for the exam setup. I wanted to make sure I wouldn't have my exam disqualified really for any stupid reason, right? And so I just really understand how I to prepare for my exam physically. You know, the desk is set up the right way. I didn't have notes accidentally scattered around. These are all presented to you before you write your exam. So make sure you read as you register for exam all of the Pearson requirements if you have your exam proctored. And just really getting to the mindset of comforting myself, I took a walk, just relaxed and tried to really calm down, because after a week or two of doing so many practice questions, you get a little burnt out, but this is the final stretch. You just really not understand you're almost there. And just to get the comfort, I double, triple, quadruple checked the proctoring requirements, as well as the actual exam date and time. I read that so many times to make sure I didn't pop in the wrong time zone. Just make sure I had everything right. I was just worried about making sure I stepped in and checked in the right way. Thanks, Edward. That's how I'd answer the question.
Thank you for that. That's a lot of great insight. What's your favorite place on the internet to get exam questions or simulated questions?
One of the ones I used quite often was called Love PM. It had, I think off the top of my head, several thousand. And so even though I had done hundreds and hundreds of exam questions, very few times on that simulation did I even see duplicates come up. And so I encourage people to just check up as many as they can and see if they can do as many as they really can fit in.
Thank you for that. Okay, over to you, Sonali. What is your secret sauce at 3 months, 2 weeks, and 2 days?
No secret sauce here. At 3 months, I was completely confused from where to study, because I sat down with Pinbox, 6th edition, and just looking at the thickness of it, I was completely, out of confidence. I cannot conquer this book and learn everything that's in it and then appear for the exam. So my husband, he suggested me a great resource on Udemy, which was paid by Joseph Phillips. I started watching his videos, and not only his videos are very, very easy to understand, even for people who don't have a lot of project management experience, that guy, he also gives you a lot of confidence as you go through his videos. He keeps cheering you up, you can do it. Just watching his videos gave me a lot of confidence. I know it's a stupid thing to say, but yes, if you haven't seen his video, please go watch his video. He is an amazing guide. I did not finish all of his videos because I gave my exam all of a sudden. I didn't have enough time because, like I said, I was giving this interview for this organization. They wanted me to have PMP, and I really wanted this job. So I was like, all right. So I did do some preparation last year. So I brushed up on whatever was missing from the old a version of the exam. I brushed up on my Agile skills and Scrum and everything that was new in this course. I had to like put the PMBOK. I could not go through all of it. I could not finish all the videos. I know it looks really sketchy how I prepare. But then, especially during the last few days before I decided to give very suddenly, the last couple of days before the exam, I just concentrated on doing a lot of practice questions that boosted my skills. I would score myself. I would do like, say, 50 questions at a time, score myself, and I could really see I was improving. I could understand the questions a lot better. And I also developed a way of answering the questions, like, because there's a lot of in the questions, that you don't need to answer the question. So there's a lot of material in the question, and if you can just understand the gist of the question, what it's going to ask you, and you can easily answer it. So that came with practice. So anybody who's who's low on confidence and wants to appear for the exam, I would strongly suggest do a lot of practice questions and grade yourself, and you can surely see that you're improving, and it'll give you, what you need to appear in the exam. So yeah, no secret sauce here. It was really haphazard kind of situation with me. I'm not the best person to answer this question.
Just a lot of hard work and a lot of grit, eh? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, over to you, Keith. Tell us your studying methodology.
I have the easiest job because Ian and Sonali did such a great job of sharing all the tips and tricks, and they're very similar to mine. 3 months out, I think it was January when I started studying for it. I, got hold of the 6th edition, got the Agile guide, and just casually reading through it, not memorizing anything, but just understanding what the terms and concepts that they talk about. I didn't, force myself to memorize anything since I knew the book was changing. I didn't know when. I think they just released the 7th edition maybe last month or 2 months ago. But really, I was told, based off things I read on forums and online, that the PMP exam doesn't really test you so much on the terms or definitions. You definitely need to know, some of the more common ones, but really test you on how to think like a project manager. So there's a lot of situational questions, and you really need to identify, what kind of concept is this, this question trying to explain. And like Sonali mentioned, there's a lot of questions that have a lot of text, long paragraph of text that, kind of waste your time, during an exam. But, it just pretty much like 1 or 2 lines that really what they're looking for. And if you can identify that, then you're able to get the, hold of the answer fairly quickly. So that's kind of what I did, 3 months out, just, casually learning about, the different concepts, familiarizing myself with all the material that's available. And then kind of 3 months, 2 weeks in, like Ian and Sonali, just doing a lot of practice questions. I also used Love PMP that Ian mentioned. It was really good since you can set how many questions you want to do. And then, you can do 20 questions, 100 questions, or, the full 180. And then it kind of simulates, what it feels like to be in the PMP exam. And then it gives you kind of explanation of, short explanation of, what the answer was and why it was that answer instead of the other one. So yeah, I spent a lot of time doing that, daily questions, every time after work, 20 questions every day, just to make sure that I'm always thinking about PMP and getting familiar with all the concepts. I also took a weekend course. So through PCIT, they do these PMP exam prep courses. So my instructor was really good, just to give me some examples of his personal experiences as a project manager. And that really helped me, visualize myself as a project manager and kind of put myself in the shoes of, someone that would be going through the exam. His experience was more on the, I guess, construction side, which is good for me since I didn't have much experience so much on the waterfall method. But yeah, just getting a lot of diverse perspectives really helped me, visualize what it means to be a PMP or project manager. And then kind of last 2 days, yeah, I took it easy. I don't think I was ready for sure. I think I was at the point a little burnt out of, doing practice questions and reading textbooks. And then, I spent time with my girlfriend, and we just watched shows and kind of relaxed a bit. And then I took my exam on a Saturday morning, so really enjoyed my weekend afterwards. So it was a good kind of way to celebrate afterwards.
Oh, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. I just want to clarify, the PMBOK version 6 is still available on the website. So if you're looking for, if you're interested in getting a membership, you can, once you're a member, you can download the Pinball Guide for free. So the 6th edition is still relevant and is still available on the website. And of course, the 7th edition is out right now. So I just want to clarify that small point there. Did any of you use any resources on LinkedIn? Because I know there are communities, there are blogs, there are coaches on LinkedIn. Did anybody make use of that?
Maybe I'll jump in quickly. I didn't use anything on LinkedIn, but at SAP, there's a kind of project management community, and I talked to some PMPs or people that have taken the exam recently. So it was helpful for me to just slowly break into that community and learn a little bit about their experiences, but nothing on LinkedIn personally.
Okay. Ian or Snelly?
No, nothing on LinkedIn. Sorry. If you want to go ahead, Ian, go ahead.
Sorry for interrupting you there. Likewise, I didn't use the LinkedIn resources. That said, to expand on what Sally mentioned, I did also use a Udemy course. That was helpful for me, perhaps earlier on, before even the 3-month range. I used some other free courses that I found online. For example, from Coursera, I believe it was there's a Columbia construction management course that they have up for free. You can audit, and that was really helpful for me. Before the 3-month range, a lot of the content wasn't specific to the PMI and the PMP, but just because of the industry and the overlap, and me entering the career in industry, that was extremely helpful for me to get a grasp of how construction project management was approached and performed.
So Nelly, did you have a comment about that?
Likewise, I didn't do any use any resources on LinkedIn. I found a lot of free resources online for taking mock test, online test, a lot of questions. So I think that really helped me a lot. And that course was from Jason Phillips. It was really, I started that course at the lowest point when I was like, I can never do this. I can never, I don't have that confidence to appear in the PMP exam. And I don't know, it kind of really did wonders for me, because going through that, somebody, teaching you slowly and everything, that you once you know that you need to know just to clear the exam. And this course is specifically this Udemy course. Jason Phillips, he focuses especially on clarity. I'm here to teach you about the concepts of project management. If you have some knowledge already, I'll show you how to clear the exam. And that at that point, that's what I needed, because like the 15 years of project management experience, I know exactly, like I've been doing that in my professional career for that long, but clearing the exam is a completely different ball game. So I needed that course, and I am glad I found it, and I did it, and I cleared the exam. That's all I just wanted to clear the exam at that point.
Well, hey, thanks for sharing the link with us on Udemy. I've got a couple of questions. One from Emily saying, curious, did anybody did a specific boot camp? Keith, the BCIT course, was that a boot camp or was it?
It was a online course, so it was on weekends. It wasn't necessarily boot camp, but they went through, they had a specific PMP book that was actually, I guess, part of the official PMI offering. So they have a course that had all the content in there. So, but I didn't do a specific boot camp. Yeah.
And I think Snelly and Ian both did it on internet resources, right?
That's correct.
We got another question. Should I prepare for the CAPM exam in a similar way to the PMP?
I don't, for myself, I don't have any experience with the CAPM. Unfortunately, I can't say, but I would assume just because the similar skill set, similar body of knowledge, and similar industry standard, I think you can study for both in a similar way. I understand that CAPM is a precursor to the PMP, which can lead up to it, if you choose to go that way. So I think the resources and the approach could be similar, but I would certainly double check on the PMI resources to check what is on the CAPM exam. For example, there's a PMP handbook that explains what's and PMP prototype questions and other resources that show from the PMI website what's on the PMP exam from them. So certainly make sure you understand what would be on the CAPM exam from PMI specifically.
So the document you should look for is called the exam content outline, and that will specify what exactly are the topics within the exam. But a lot of people who are preparing for this CAPM will attend, PMP study groups, PMP boot camps, PMP courses, so that, because like Ian said, the content is pretty similar. Does that answer your question? Oh, and then we have another question from Richard asking how much Agile content is there on the exam? And you know what? Let's add, I've got a whole bunch of questions in here. Let's see. The Agile question on the exam. Let's move on to our next question, and we'll be talking about what their exam experience. So let's hold off on that one. Can anyone share the downloadable PMBOK guide link? The downloadable PMBOK guide is password protected to your membership account. So it's great that you can download it, but it'll be very difficult to share that because it is password protected towards the individual membership. I took the exam with the 6th edition. Since it's changed to 7, and do I necessarily have to retake the exam? Right now, there's 2 answers to that question, Clark, about the different editions between the 6th edition and the 7th edition of the PMBOK guide. PMI says that the exam is not tied to a specific PMBOK guide. In fact, if you go to the website, they list there's a list of written resources that you can take a look at for the PMBOK guide. So that's the first answer. And the second answer is the 6th edition is still valid, and it's still very much a resource for the exam just because of the waterfall content on there. And the exam has not changed. The exam content outline has not changed towards the 7th edition yet, because like Keith said, the 7th edition came out last month, but the exam content outline for the current exam came out in January. So it hasn't changed towards the 7th edition yet. Okay. Peter Martin, CAPM is study of PMBOK flow, and there is a CAPM handbook where PMI is based on PM experience. Just making a comment there. Well noted. Any other questions before we move on about about the exam preparation part? Feel free to post. Happy to pause and entertain questions as we move along. So let's move over to our next question, and that is, so we've talked about the preparation phase of your exam experience. Now let's talk about exam day, okay? What did you do on the day of the exam? Did you have a big breakfast? Did you have 12 cups of coffee? Did you, carry a rabbit's foot? And then also tell us about the exam experience without telling us about, the questions, because we don't want to be doing that. But tell us, I believe they changed the format now where there are breaks within the exam, and the whole proctor experience, being at home and not having to go to a testing site. So if you can talk a little bit about that, please. And let's start with Sonali again, please.
Thank you, Ed. So the first thing I did on my exam day was to make sure that my kids are not at home. So I asked my husband, take both of the kids out in the playground or somewhere and don't come back home for another 3 hours, because it's a long, long test. So once they were out of the picture, I had the whole house to myself and peace of mind. So yeah, the exam is really long. It's 230 minutes. It's 180 questions in total, and you'll get 2 breaks of 10 minutes each after the 60th and the 120th question. So the of 60, like you'll get the first 60 questions, you'll have to answer those. And once you've answered those and submitted them, they're locked. You cannot go back and change the answers or even see the questions. After that, you're asked if you want to take a 10-minute break. It's optional. You can say yes or no. I didn't take the first break, but after the 120th question, I was really tired, so I did take the 10-minute break. And then I proceeded to do the next 60 questions. So that's how my exam was. I did it online on Pearson VUE. I could not see a proctor on the other end. So they sent me a link on my phone to click pictures of my room from all different angles. I had to upload my pictures. Also a picture of my laptop, of my ID card, of myself. And when everything was accepted, they started the exam, and which was a really very good thing, because if I knew that somebody else's video is on, like I've given many online exams, and in some exams I could see the video of the proctor, them looking at me, and it really, it bothers me. So that was not there, which was a good thing. Other things to note is so that, blank answers are marked as incorrect, but there's no negative marking. So I would say attempt all the questions if you don't know the correct answers. Most of the questions were multiple choices. You had to pick one or more than one answer out of 4 options. And the best thing about this was, if there was more than one correct answer to that question, you cannot go to the next question unless you have marked. If you were asked to pick 2 options out of 4, unless you have picked 2 options, you cannot go to the next question. So you'll not miss out. If you haven't read the question properly and you have just ticked one of the answers, this will not happen in this exam. So they give you a warning. See, if you have not marked 2 required options. And there we got drag and drop questions as well. I had like 2 different columns. We had to drag and drop, like it's kind of matching thing. So we had to drag and drop and match the questions. I know I'm not explaining it very correctly. I don't think I'm very clear. So we had like boxes on one side and boxes on the other side, and you have to match the correct boxes with each other. So in the training with Joseph Phillips, he also said that there are hotspot questions, like you'll get a picture, and out of that, in that picture, you'll have to pick a spot out of the predefined, say, 4 spots that are already marked in the picture. But I didn't get any such question in my test that I had to like choose a spot on a picture. So yeah. Also, when you are doing online proctored exam, please go in 30 minutes prior to the appointment time, because sometimes computer will not cooperate. You are not carrying your ID and stuff, and you need to carry your mobile phones, but not in your hand. And you need, but for clicking pictures and everything, you need to carry your phone in the room. I didn't have that with me in the beginning, and they asked me to bring my phone and to click the pictures and everything. And there are also, the most useful option in the exam was to strike out the the options out of 4 options, because what I did, I answered all the questions by an elimination method, because at times it was really difficult to because 2 answers were really close. It could be this one or this one, so I went with the elimination method for most of my answers. So I just strike out the options that I felt did not suit it there at all, and in many questions, the last option was the correct answer that was left after eliminating all the other options. So that's that, and you will get the result immediately once you have submitted your test, and PMI does not release the score. You just get see you have passed or not passed. So that's all the info from my side. Please feel free to add.
Thank you, Sonali. Couple of questions. How long did it take you to write the exam? Did you take up the entire time of the exam, or did you finish early?
I finished very early, and I was very surprised when I submitted my last question. I had an hour remaining. It was crazy, and I was very nervous at that point, thinking of like, oh no, what I've done? Have I, created a big blunder here? Have I not read my questions properly? And The thing is, you cannot go back and change the answers by the time you're submitting your last question. You just have those 60 questions in front of you. The other 120 questions are gone. So yeah, I did finish very early. I don't know why.
And we have another person who just wanted to, Jalim wanted to confirm that once you pass a section of the exam, you cannot go back.
No.
Is that true? Yeah. That's,
yeah.
So
you get
at
questions
60?
in batches of 60. 60 questions will come on your screen. You have to answer those, submit. It'll give you a warning that you cannot go back and change those answers, or you cannot even go back and look at the questions once you're done with those 60 questions.
Okay. Thank you so much. Okay, over to Keith. Tell us about your exam day.
Yeah, I'm actually going to even go before my exam day and talk about the pre-exam topic. Choosing the date for exam was pretty interesting. I actually didn't anticipate taking the exam on the day that I actually did. So I initially, when I was looking, there were not that many options on the weekends. So I think I booked my exam maybe a month or two out. And then I just went back and refreshed every so often. I think a lot of people maybe get cold feet and just cancel their exam time. And so I managed to snatch up like a good slot on the weekend. So you don't worry about scheduling like exam dates far out. You can always go back to the website and just refresh and change your exam time. Of course, if you feel ready. If you don't feel ready, then you can also change your exam time to be further along the day. And then before actually doing the exam, on the PMI website, there's some example questions that show the different types of questions that you might get. So there's like fill in the blank questions, multiple choice, hotspot, etc. You can find that document on the PMI website, and that'll get you more comfortable with what kind of questions that you might anticipate. Majority of the questions are, I think, multiple choice, just the standard, what you would normally get in any exam. In terms of during the exam, I think I had a pretty similar experience to Sonali. I did take both of the breaks. It was just helpful for me to, rest my eyes and go to the washroom, grab some water. Yeah, so after, they split up into 3 chunks, like Sonali mentioned, after 60 questions, before you actually submit it, they give you a warning sign if you want to, go back and check any questions. During the exam itself, if you didn't answer a question, you can actually flag it, and then it'll highlight that question for you, so that it'll automatically bring you back to the ones that you flagged. So for the ones that you're sure of, then you don't need to check those. The ones that you're not so sure of, you can flag them, and you can go back, before you submit that, chunk of 60 questions. So I found that really useful. And then also just highlighting specific words, while I'm reading questions, crossing out things that I know aren't, relevant to the question. So that was kind of my exam strategy to get the right questions. And I had, I think, 30 to 40 minutes left by the time I finished my exam. It was really interesting. I wasn't sure if I was going to pass or not. The questions were all very, I guess, abstract. There weren't any questions I knew really, for sure, hey, that's the right answer. So yeah, I submitted it. I got a really good result, and it all went out really, really well at the end.
And did you take up the entire duration of the exam, or did you finish early?
Oh, I had about 40 minutes left. So the timer just starts from, I think 230 minutes, and then depends how long you take for your first 60 minutes, right? Once you hit your first 60 minutes, if you decide to take a break, the timer's always showing at the top right, but also show you how much time you have left. So during a break, you can see, maybe I have an hour and a half left for my, remaining 60 questions, or if you have less time or whatnot, you can adjust accordingly.
Okay. There's a question here. It's quite long. I'm just going to paraphrase here from Clark. Basically, he's asking, is how much of the exam is Agile content?
I would say 50% is Agile content.
50? Wow.
Yeah,
50.
a good chunk of it is. So reading the Agile Guide is really important, including the appendix, because they go into the specific terms. So yeah, definitely. I read it once at the beginning of the PMP, and then right kind of a week or two before, I just did a quick skim over the content as well.
Okay.
And there's a little tip. Please go over the PMI's Code of Ethics as well. It's not explicitly mentioned, but it's a big part of the whole being a project manager. So
Okay.
Similarly, I think my Agile content was fairly high, I would go as far as saying I had more Agile questions than not. Certainly coming from a non-Agile, traditionally non-Agile industry, it was more challenging for me. But I think it's really good in hindsight to really prepare on your Agile methodology and content.
Ian, over to you. What was your exam day like?
Certainly. Keith Sinelli's touched everything, really. You know, the Pearson platform, that interface has also a calculator. I think kind of getting used to that was just a bit novel to me, clicking buttons that were a bit slow, and just having everything on the screen. You're not allowed to bring in a calculator. That's on the Pearson and PMI website, I believe, that what you're allowed to bring into exam. I asked my proctor when I checked in with him if I could bring water. He said yes, but I think he asked to look at my mug first. So if you ever have any hesitancy or questions, just check with your proctor. I was worried about disqualifying myself just for stupid reasons. So I even asked him if I could go to the washroom during the break. So I was really making sure every step I did not cross any rules that I didn't mean not to. So for my exam day as well, long tip, I think Keith had a really good point. Taking it on the weekend would have been really good. Novice right here, I took it at the end of a work day. That's the worst thing you could do. Let me tell you, my exam was long. My focus was not on point. My eyes were drifting just from staring from a white screen. My focus is low, and I was stumbling on reading sentences. You know, book your exam on a day you don't have other commitments. That's my hot tip. Certainly, it'll help you. At the end of my exam, I think I had about 20-30 minutes left. I did fully use the breaks between the questions. I don't know if those breaks were part of the overall 230 minutes. I believe they were, or they weren't. They weren't. Okay, they weren't. But it says on the exam content outline and everything, the PMP handbook. So certainly, just really understanding that the exam is a marathon, that you've got a lot of questions to answer, a lot of content to read. That was the biggest thing, and so really reading all those and answering all of those practice exams and simulations was just so helpful getting ready for the actual exam.
Okay, we have a couple of questions. Thank you, Ian, for that. Winnie asks, looks like a lot of reading in the PMBOK guide. What is your strategy in going over the textbook materials? Anybody?
Maybe I can comment there. I actually found the PMBOK pretty helpful. I didn't read it line by line, page by page. I don't think that would have been helpful. There's hundreds of ITTOs and everything you can memorize. That would not be helpful. Instead, I kind of used it as a resource. You know, I skimmed through and looked at, are there terms here I've never seen before? Are there concepts and things explained in the PMBOK that I haven't seen or I'm unaware of? And so just kind of skimming through, looking for things, that was really helpful for me. And so the PMBOK was kind of a great all-in-one package. You might not eat everything in that package, and that's what I'm saying. So really look at it and see what's helpful for you, how you might use it. Certainly, it was helpful for me as a way to structure my approach to studying. It kind of broke it down in a way that was really easy for me to imagine. So for the PMBOK 6, when I was studying, it kind of looked at all the different project management knowledge areas at that time, which were the 13 things like scope and communications. So in construction, project management, that's all very relevant and very comfortable for me to have kind of looked at as a resource.
Anybody else?
Well, as far as PMBOK goes, I did not finish the whole of it, but I would say like anybody who's trying to, memorize the PMBOK and learn everything that's in it. It's not, say, familiarize yourself instead of trying to memorize it. Try to understand what's trying to tell you, and you don't have to learn it, like know it word by word, or everything. Also, not everything that's in there. There's a lot of material in the PMBOK. So that's why I kind of skipped over to the video, so like somebody would like teach it to me in a concise way, and so you find what works best for you. So like to each their own.
And that's actually the next question Nathan is asking. I'm having difficulty memorizing the inputs, tools, and techniques and outputs, IITOs. Is it practical to memorize every nitty-gritty IITO, or is it better to know and understand the unique IITOs that process specifically, i.e. cost baseline, or determine the budget process?
Yeah, no, there's no need to memorize, every ITTO. Like, there's way too many ITTOs to memorize, and you're better off, doing some more practice questions than, trying to memorize content. So that's what I read online as well. I know a lot of people, at least the older content, they tell you to memorize ITTOs and like it'll be on the exam or anything. But for me, just understanding, what's unique to each section, each of the process areas, and then, at a high level, understanding where things fit in was sufficient for me.
Excellent.
I guess briefly, likewise, I didn't think it was important to memorize, but it was important for me to look at, just for me to reference and see, are there any ITTOs here that are new to me? Like if I read that process and I didn't know what cost baseline was, then I'd Google it. And that's where I thought ITTOs were helpful, just as a reference.
Okay. Ariel is asking, are there situational questions?
Most of the questions were situational. So you'll be given a situation. This is happening within a certain organization. What should this person do? What is the right course of action? Most of the questions are like that, and also in such questions, there's a lot of text that you don't need. So yeah, find the gist of the question. What will you save more time? Sometimes, what worked for me, I just read the last line first, and then I went back and read the question from the beginning, because the last line is what it's asking you. And when you have that in mind, okay, I need to look for this thing to answer my question. And then you go back and read the question from the beginning, you'll immediately know what the answer is.
Yeah, that's a really good tip. I've heard that a lot, is to read the last line of the paragraph or the content, so that that's in your brain before you read the situation. How about yourselves, Keith? Any situation questions for you?
Yeah, no, it was mostly situational questions, like similarly. So, they'll give you a scenario and then, either explain or ask you to, is this an example of, this topic, or, what should you do, or what would the PM do in this situation? And that's why it was so difficult to gauge whether or not you're correct, because it's not definitions or anything, right? It's just, here's what I would do as a PM. And you really need to think about what the PMBOK kind of would say. You need to think about what they would say. In reality, sometimes it's not always what it is like black and white in the textbook, right? There's different industries, and how we operate is a little different as well. So you need to really think like, a project manager of what the PMBOK describes. And that's also some advice that my instructor gave me as well. Just really think what would PMI say about this situation.
Likewise, just expanding on Keith's point right there. I guess PMI's understanding of a PM might be different from organization to organization. This is because it reflects industry standard. It's a general rough line. Of course, it's not going to be on point for every organization. That's why you tailor. That's why you're looking to be the PM and represent that project. And so you want to have that PM mindset and really understand what PMI is looking for you to do. I think that's why a lot of the situational questions. Likewise, I didn't know if I had answered the correct answer every time. I was feeling pretty unsure, but I scored pretty well, and I think I guess as a baseline, if you refer to your scoring during simulations, I scored pretty well on the exam, and towards the end, I was getting 70 to 80% on most of my simulations.
Wow, that's impressive. So just for some context around the different types of questions, it was really the new exam content outline that PMI started having different types of questions. So before it was all multiple choice. You had 4 choices. There's a question and you had to answer it. So Sonali mentioned that there's matching questions now, and that's an innovation that they're doing that haven't done before. The other one, of course, is situational type questions, where not only you are given probably 4 answers and you can probably eliminate 2 of them, but they're asking for the best answer. So 2 of the answers might be correct, but they want you to give the best one. So that's a little bit tricky, and that's why those situation questions are a little bit harder. There's probably a couple more. Did you see any animations? Because I heard that they were thinking about doing like an animation as well, and then giving you a question after that. Is that any experience with that? Okay. Again, PMI trying to innovate with their exams, and I've sat on some webinars where they talked about some of the things that they're doing with the exams coming up. Okay, next question is, Emily, are you allowed to have a scratch pad or paper while taking the exam? No.
Nothing on your
Not
desk.
You won't need that. It's like just read the question and answer. There's an online calculator. Like I said, you might need some basic addition or subtraction in some questions. So there's an online basic calculator for that. Nothing else is really required.
Just to add on that point, there is a drawing tool on the Pearson software. So you can sketch directly onto the kind of little notepad on your screen. I used that for some formulas that I needed to visualize because I didn't want to do the math in my head. Hot tip, just from my university experience, never do all your math in your head. Just that was my experience. I did use the notepad on screen.
Okay. So some of the online questions have been answered by Sonali and others, so I won't go over the ones that has been answered. So the next one is from Ariel again. Is there a time limit per section or total? I.e., if you take a long time on the first 60 questions, do you have less for the other 2 sets of 60s? It's just one time?
One clock, and that keeps counting down. So if you take a lot of time for your first 60, you better pick up the pace for the remaining 120. Yeah.
Manage your time, like Keith said. If you are really slow during the first 60 questions, you will be in a very tight spot during your last questions. So I try to do my first 60 questions very quickly. That's why I ended up with a spare hour at the end.
Yeah. Did you do any like mental calculations on where you should be at half hour or 60 minutes, or you can break your questions down? I've heard that's a technique as well.
Like approximately 1 hour for 60 questions. So a minute a question. That's where your going rate should be.
Yeah.
You get
I recommend
30
that.
minutes for 180 questions, right? So just over a minute each, you should try and aim for that.
Mm-hmm. That way you can see where you're at, right? Wow, that's a lot of Agile. Thanks for the response. Yeah, 50%. I'm surprised on that too. That's huge. Which really tells you that PMI has fully embraced Agile and where they're at now. I'm curious about Ariel says, now I am curious what you would need a calculator for. Are there calculations that on the exam? Okay, we'll just leave it at that. There are calculations.
Very basic calculations. You don't need square or square root or something like that. Just basic addition, subtraction stuff.
There's a question about what percentage do you need to pass the exam? That is not a known response. PMI does not provide anybody with a passing rate or percentage to pass the exam. That is depending on a whole bunch of factors, and they're the only ones who know what the percentage is. But I think Ian made a good point that if you're going into the exam, I mean, he was shooting at 80% on his simulations. That gave him the confidence to write it. I never got 80 on mine, but I was in the high 70s, and that's probably what you should be shooting for if you're writing, practicing simulations. Jason says the same thing. 70 to 80% on simulations a safe bet. Yeah, I think so. That's what I've read, and that's kind of been my experience as well. Okay, Winnie, after you submitted your exam and received the score, will you have a chance to find out those with incorrect answers? Yeah, no, I didn't get that neither. But you do get some feedback on which areas, right? Can you talk a little bit about that?
So I think the exam is divided into three areas. You have like 42% of question are people question, 50% question are process based, and 8% question are business environment based. So you will get a grading on like how you did in what in all these three categories. You don't really get a score. You don't get to see your answers or where you did poorly. I think if you don't pass the exam, you don't know where you did where you need to improve. So yeah, just aim for a good score in your practice test. That's what I did too. I was aiming for 80%. I think that's a safe bet. And honestly, there's no scoring or nothing to to analyze how our test went. So.
Peter says that at the testing center, they provide you with a sheet of paper and pen, which is true. They gave me a piece of paper and a pen when I did it at the testing center. They also gave you earplugs as well. So I guess, I don't know when they open up again, or if they are doing that in person, that might be true as well, but we'll have to wait and see. Mo has a question. Was there any need to use calculator to find out the answers? Yeah, there's calculations, Mo.
I didn't actually use the calculator. I didn't have any questions, so maybe it just varies depending on what you get.
I had maybe 1 or 2 questions, not many.
Okay. Ariel is asking, can you skip a question?
Yes, you can skip questions, you can flag questions and come back to it, but not once you have submitted your questions. If you have not answered any of those questions, you cannot go back. So think hard before submitting, pressing that submit button. That's your only chance to review those 60 questions. Okay.
Peter says that there may be earned value or network diagrams on the exam. Clark's asking, what is next after you pass the exam and come? Oh, Clark, you've taken my next question here. That the next question is, what happens now post exam? What are your thoughts? And what is the journey for you? Let's start with Keith again.
Yeah, I mean, the journey never really ends, right? It's, I think, 4 months since I took the exam, so really living out what the future is right now. So I think the biggest difference that I've noticed is just at work, I noticed that I just naturally leverage a lot of the different tools and techniques that I studied about, but like didn't necessarily define as specific terms. And, depending on where you're at, your organization might call it a little different, but it's basically the same concept, like, Kanban and retrospectives. Those are things that I normally use, but we don't really call them those things necessarily. Specifically, I now use kind of like a modified version of the daily stand-ups for my team meetings. So when I'm interacting with different stakeholders, we find it helpful to just share what's going on and give a kind of update of what's going on in the project space. But yeah, it's an ongoing journey. You overall you get more experience about project management by doing projects. Every team that you work with has different stakeholders, so it's always different, and that's really what I enjoy about working on projects. So yeah, just continue to work on projects, learn about different tools and techniques, and it'll really build my tool set as I work with different stakeholders.
Anybody else?
I can step in here just briefly. I guess for me, the PMP was a great credential for project management. First, project management expands so many different disciplines. And for me, my be landscape architecture. And so my professional development will towards becoming a registered landscape architect.
You're breaking up there, Ian.
Sorry, can you hear me better?
Yep.
I'm just gonna yell at the screen here. All right.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry for my mic issues here. I usually don't have these issues. So for myself, I'm just gonna pursue my industry-specific designations, so recognized by the BC government in our industry. I want to work towards becoming a registered landscape architect. Similarly, for engineers, they might work towards becoming a PEng, a professional engineer. You know, biologists may want to become RP Bio. Planners, you know, there's so many different designations you can work towards to, you know, further kind of build your skill set, have a recognition and the kind of industry standards that are associated for these, and of course the career development. And so I'm always working towards improving myself. And I think within project management, I want to keep up to date. It's always evolving, and kind of as how we're kind of discussing the new exam, I totally anticipate project management to continue changing, and I need to keep on top of that to be relevant in the field. For myself, I feel I'm fairly new into my career. I want to be competitive, and I want to be a force to be reckoned with, and so to keep on top of that, I certainly need to be up to key and tune with my PM skills and knowledge. So, you know, that could be being involved with the local chapter here, the PMI's local chapter. There's sorry, I forget the exact name, the Coast West.
Canadian West Coast
Canadian
chapter.
West, yes, exactly. And, you know, through networking, through sharing experiences, it's a great way to continuously improve yourself. That's certainly one way. And as well, the PDUs, you have to maintain those for your certification, and so that's a great way to do the 2-in-1. Feed two birds with one stone, right?
And what are your plans, Sonali?
Well, my plans are enrolling. So I was kind of I went to give this test in kind of haste. I was in the process of interview with Power Factors. They are a asset management company. They provide software as a service to renewable utilities. And they really liked my resume and everything and my experience. And they were like, it would be really great if you had like PMP certification to add to you all your experience, you know, because it really matters to us. And at that point, I was like, I was going through the videos, I was learning, I was still in learning phase, and I didn't have like much time to prepare myself to appear in the exam. So within 2 days of giving that interview, I was like, no, I need to do this now. It's now or never. You know, if I don't get the certification, I might lose this chance as well. So like I went into 2 days of boot camp. I just solved questions after questions to 2 long days, and then I appeared for the exam and I cleared my certification. I sent them that for the certification. I have passed it, and now would you consider me for this position? And I was accepted. I'm now working for them as a technical project manager. So my journey is continuing, and I'm really glad that PMP certification has really helped me achieve what I was aiming for. So yeah, it doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah, the certification is really a great way to, you know, be competitive and differentiate yourself from others in your industry. We've got 15 minutes left. I am going to post a link to a survey for this event. There is a question in the survey that has to do with starting up a study group with the chapter. So if you are currently considering writing the exam and you would like some help, we're not talking about a boot camp, we're not talking about a course, we're talking about a group of individuals with like-minded goals of, you know, passing the PMP, getting together, having discussions about the exam, similar like what we did today, or even doing some simulation exams together so we can talk about questions. Please fill out the survey and let us know if you're interested in doing that. And as a chapter, we're here to support you, and and we'll be happy to put something like that together if there's enough people who would like to have a study group. Meanwhile, let's go back to a couple of questions. Ian, your certification about, there was a British Columbia certification that you were interested. I think it was landscape architecture, or?
So for the discipline I work primarily in with landscape construction and management, that's administered for the BC Society of Landscape Architects, and the designation is a registered landscape architect. And so a lot of what this recognizes is urban planning and design in the landscape context that may include streetscapes, public realm, parks, and green infrastructure. And so that's what I'm working on right now.
Ed, you're mute.
Oh, thank you. A couple of the questions on the chat has been answered, so I won't go through that. And let's see, the link isn't working for the survey. Let me see if I can open it up. And copy and paste the link to your window. Try again. It looks like it's working for me. So if someone can try it, yeah, the link is working. Mine works. Mine works. Okay. While we're doing the survey, the final question is for all three of you. What is the #1 primary advice for exam takers? I know you've mentioned a lot, and some of us could be overwhelmed, like myself. We've talked a lot about your experience, but what is your #1 advice for someone who's going to write the exam the next 5 months? Let's go with Sonali again.
Thank you, Ed. I know, like, for a lot of people, even for me, just the thought of writing the exam was a daunting task, even though I have had like years of experience and I've been studying for almost, like, I started studying in 2020. I've been preparing myself slowly, but then, you know, to build up that confidence, you really need to do practice tests. If you have not started doing that, please do it. And it always helps to have one person in your study group, at least one person in your study group, you know, so you can like exchange ideas and communicate with each other back and forth, like what you know best, you can teach it to them, because I know it can become really, you know, boring at times, honestly, you know, because you're continuously learning, reading about the same thing over and over. So having a study buddy will really help you. And sometimes, you know, you just need to do it. I was stuck in that phase for a long time. I was reading and reading and reading, and it will never end. You will always have something more to read. So, you know, fix a date. If you think you're almost there, fix a date and appear for the exam. You can do it 3 times in a year. So even if you like do not pass it on the first try, you still have 2 more attempts in that year. You know, just do it. At some point, you need to do it.
That's good advice, because the exam does not become real until you have a date, right? That was my experience. Until that date is showing up on your application, it's not real, and then it becomes really, really tangible. Ian, how about yourself?
Certainly, you've heard it a lot here tonight. Practice questions, practice questions. One other point I might say, just so we don't close off on more practice question hints, you know, to become eligible to take the exam, you need to have project management experience. Remember, you're not just trying to write an exam here, you're trying to equip yourself with the tool for life. So I kind of saw my studying, my resourcing and everything as a tool for my work and for how I looked at my work and reviewed my projects. I think that was really helpful to me, kind of connecting the dots and seeing, oh, that's what this process was called, or that's how I was approaching my work. You know, just formalizing the knowledge that I had somewhere in my head, or didn't. I mean, lots of content was completely new to me. And so just really making everything concrete through the work I did, and trying to be as applicable and real life as I could be with the content I was learning.
Thank you, Ian. And Keith, over to you.
Great. Yeah, no, I'm fortunate, I have to bring back practice questions because that's just so important. You have to do them. Also, just kind of want to touch on what Sonali mentioned about kind of study groups. Something that I did find really useful that I didn't mention earlier on is there's a really good YouTuber that does PMP practice questions. I found him maybe 2 or 3 weeks right before my PMP exam. It really helped me position myself for the exam. The questions were very similar to actually what was on the exam, and he also explained the rationale behind, why and how he got to that question or that specific answer. So I'll put that YouTuber in the chat. I'm not sponsored or anything, but he was really helpful for me to, get really familiar with the exam, and he explained things really, really well. So he has a lot of YouTube videos. He does, I think, live sessions every week. And you can also look at all his previous recordings as well, and that was really helpful for me.
Well, this person has a great book as well. If somebody is into books rather than videos, he has a good book too. I did not read that, but a lot of my friends who I was communicating with during my preparation, everybody suggested to read his book. I didn't do that, obviously, but.
Okay, thank you so much for all those resources. Clark has a question, if time's allowed. What is your career tip to get more hands-on experience on project management? I can answer that one. You know what you can do? If you want experience in project management, come volunteer with PMI CWCC. There's lots of opportunities to volunteer within the chapter and with our partners like project management volunteers. And if you're looking for hands-on experience, you'll find it within the chapter for sure. And you know what? You don't have to be with the chapter. Go and find a cause or purpose in an organization that you're passionate about, and help them with the project. That will get you your experience as well. We're almost out of time. Please fill out the survey. If we get enough people, we will start a study group. And we really want your feedback on this type of event because we'll do more if this is something that you like. Does a great overview of PMP, Emily? Oh, I'm not sure exactly what Emily's asking, but we've got 5 minutes left. I'm gonna have to finish this off by just thanking our 3 panel participants, Sonali, Keith, and Ian. Thank you so much for the evening. I know that you've also did a lot of prep work in preparation for this event, so really appreciate it. We do have a small gift for you from PMI CWCC, and I will email that to you in the next day or so. So please enjoy it, and I am going to pass it back to Nathan, who will take us with some final announcements and your PDU code. So don't go away until you get the PDU code. Over to you, Nathan.
Yeah, thanks, Edward. And yeah, once again, thanks, Sonali, Keith, and Ian for your insights into this. I think it really helps us both from understanding what to expect and even psychologically, because test taking, it's a very scary thing for a lot of us, and to have people who've actually been involved in the process definitely helps us in terms of realizing that we're not alone into this.